We're in the studio on a Sunday because NFL free agency gets underway tomorrow. No days off, literally right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now, and there's plenty to discuss. Teams are calling the Philadelphia Eagles about star defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Will the Eagles trade him? Big news yesterday, which I talked about here on the channel. Does the Jordan Davis contract extension at $26 million per year impact Jalen Carter's future? The Eagles are working very hard prior to tomorrow to keep Jaelan Phillips at more than $20 million per season, and this A.J. Brown trade saga should be resolved soon. We're talking about all of that. But first, an exciting announcement in case you missed it. Over the weekend, I have launched a brand new NFL channel here under the Chat Sports umbrella. Nothing is changing here on Eagles Now. I'm still going to give you Eagles content every single day, but I've always wanted to talk about the NFL and football on a national scale, and I'm doing that on a new show called The Chase Down. I'd really appreciate it if you go on over there and hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers in 48 hours since launching it following the Max Crosby trade on Friday night. I'm going to make the sublink the pinned comment of today's Philadelphia Eagles Now. And if you do subscribe to the Chase Down, leave a comment. I'll be sure to check that out as well. We're off and running. Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. My name is Chase Sr., and as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for hanging out on this football Sunday. There is a lot of buzz around Jalen Carter right now, and his name has popped up over the last couple of days as one of the juiciest, most notable trade targets across the league. Pretty Ricky, everybody's favorite dog on Twitter on Friday, had that report that the Eagles made Jalen Carter available in a Max Crosby trade. Of course, Max Crosby traded to the Baltimore Ravens later on Friday night, and then Pretty Ricky was right on that, and he's been banished from Twitter. His account, it's taken down. And once again, we don't know where Pretty Ricky is. And then how about this? Jeremy Fowler of ESPN today put out a rumors column in the lead up to free agency starting tomorrow, and he reports that multiple teams have called the Eagles about a Jalen Carter trade. And we must decipher here. Are teams calling about Jalen Carter because they're interested in one of the top young defensive players in football, or, this is important, are the Eagles shopping Jalen Carter? On Saturday, what has put the wheels in motion for probably a lot of teams across the NFL and a lot of fans and people who cover this sport was that the Eagles signed Jordan Davis to a huge contract extension. I love JD. I thought he played at an all-pro level last year. I thought that he was going to get an extension between $15 and $20 million per season. He got $26 million in average annual value and more than $60 million in guaranteed money. So naturally, that leads to a lot of us thinking, does the Davis extension mean that Jalen Carter is the odd man out? Because Jalen Carter is going to be in the market for $30+ million per season. And can the Eagles afford to pay two defensive tackles nearly $60 million combined when you think about Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean also on defense coming up for contract extensions in the near future? So I think what all of this means here in trying to figure out what's going on, teams are probably calling the Eagles because Jordan Davis got paid. And so they're hitting up Howie and they're saying, well, you paid one of your defensive tackles. Are you going to pay the other star defensive tackle? From Philadelphia's standpoint, if they want to move off of Jalen Carter, they could want to build around Jordan Davis and Moro Ajomo. That would still be one of the better defensive tackle duos in the NFL. There's also this, though. There is no rush to extend Jalen Carter. If you exercise his fifth-year option and you guarantee his salary for 2027, he'd be under contract for the next 2 seasons. And I also think that this could be in play. Jalen Carter is represented by Drew Rosenhaus, one of the most famous agents in professional sports. From their point of view, Jalen Carter's coming off an injury-plagued 2025. His value may be slightly down. But if he has a 2026, like he had in 2024, and he's once again an all-pro, there is no doubt that his average annual value will be well north of $30 million, and Jalen Carter could become the highest paid defensive tackle in the history of the National Football League. Or something concerning and fishy could be going on, that the Eagles are worried about the bilateral shoulder issues. They're worried about Jalen Carter's immaturity because that's popped up from time to time, or they just simply don't see him as a building block for this organization. Tough decisions are definitely coming up for Howie Roseman when he looks at some of these young defensive players. Quinyon Mitchell is going to be in the market for more than $30 million per season. Cooper DeJean at 25 plus. The Eagles can't afford to pay all of these players. But I also think that the Eagles and Howie have to tread lightly here. And here's why. Things could go sideways if the Eagles decide to keep and pay the good player and good guy in Jordan Davis over the great player who might have some issues, because it's the great player who truly moves the needle. What I would do personally, Jalen Carter is a force. Jalen Carter is a difference maker. Jalen Carter is a game changer. He's one of the most disruptive players in the National Football League. You can't let those types of dogs go. And oftentimes, it is harder to find a defensive tackle who's as good as Jalen Carter compared to finding an edge rusher. I would make the argument there are more edge rushers available than premier pass rushing defensive tackles who can penetrate through the interior and really disrupt every single play against the run and against the pass. Of course, we do have to segue to this portion of the conversation. If the Eagles do trade away Jalen Carter, what does the trade package look like? At the very least, I think Howie Roseman must demand 2 first-round picks. Some of you watching this show might say, Chase, that's way too much. I'd say you're casual. Jalen Carter is one of the best young defensive players in football. He's 24 years old, going on 25, and you look at what the recent market has been for marquee star defensive player trades. The 26-year-old Micah Parsons fetched 2 first-round picks, going to the Dallas Cowboys, and of course Green Bay got Micah Parsons. The soon-to-be 29-year-old Max Crosby on Friday night got 2 ones. And of course the Raiders sent him to Baltimore. If you're going to trade away Jalen Carter, he's worth at least 2 first-round picks. And my guy Larry Krueger, who is a legendary radio voice in the Bay Area, texted me, and he said, the Niners are interested in Jalen Carter. What would it cost? Nick Bosa and a 1? If it's not 2 ones, then it has to be a marquee player and a 1. Because Kenny Clark was included in that Micah Parsons trade, but Jalen Carter is younger than Micah Parsons. So there are reported teams interested here. Green Bay Packers making calls, Chicago Bears, San Francisco 49ers, the defending champions, Seattle Seahawks, and the Las Vegas Raiders. But what Jeremy Fowler also reported on top of teams calling about Jalen Carter is that this offseason, the Eagles have made it a big priority to keep their defensive front intact in giving them contract extensions. Who did he list? Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Jaelan Phillips. That would not align with the Eagles shopping Jalen Carter. And I don't know if Howie Roseman would want to shop Jalen Carter unless there's a package that clearly moves the needle. It could also be a flex play for Howie here to deflect some of the attention away from the A.J. Brown talk and onto Jalen Carter. So what say you? Would you trade Jalen Carter for 2 first-round picks? What if it's the Raiders giving up 14th overall and a pick next year? Type deal or no deal? Let me know down in the comment section right now. Now, St. Patrick's Day is coming up on Tuesday, but are you going to be out celebrating St. Patrick's Day on Tuesday? Probably not. You're probably going to wait until Saturday when there are a bunch of St. Patrick's Day parades. There are a lot of bar crawls. Well, good news for you. Do you want to look good while you're out celebrating St. Patty's Day? We've got you covered. Become a member of the Philly drinking team with Chat Sports and Eagles Now's exclusive St. Patrick's Day shirt. It's available right now at chatsports.com/EaglesGreen. You can also get a Chat Sports beer hat to pair it with that shirt at chatsports.com/beers. Some of you watching the show, and obviously we have multiple colors of these hats available right now, might be saying, well, Chase, if I want to go out on Saturday, am I going to be able to get these items in time? We got a deal for all of you. Hit this drop-down window here, and if you select express shipping as of this March 8th, you will get these items on March 12th, and we're giving you a discount here. Express shipping being discounted from $9 to $5, but you got to hit that drop down. Chatsports.com/EaglesGreen. Support the show. Look good for St. Patrick's Day. The Eagles, according to Jeremy Fowler, are trying to re-sign Jaelan Phillips. The price tag for him, $20+ million per year. Still young. He's been very effective under Vic Fangio. And last year, he was one of the most productive pass rushers in the NFL. And that trade of Jaelan Phillips in the lead up to the NFL trade deadline really helped the Eagles defense go from being really good to great. They're in that upper tier alongside the Seattle Seahawks and the Houston Texans, and a big reason for that, number 50 here to my right. Against the run, against the pass, he was a demon. In 8 games with Philadelphia, he had 41 pressures. On top of that, 32 hurries, 2 sacks, 7 quarterback hits. And I talked about this a few days ago, last week, and it's funny. I was looking at the comment section. People are like, Chase, the Eagles were never getting Max Crosby. Why did you keep saying they were going to get Max Crosby? There is a difference, ladies and gentlemen, between talking about a Max Crosby trade and my opinion on whether or not I want the Eagles to land him. If you actually watch this show, what have I been saying? I don't want the Eagles to trade for Crosby. I didn't want them to, and I'm glad that they didn't. And I said this the other day before Crosby was dealt. If I were the Eagles, I would just want to bring back Jaelan Phillips. Younger player, more productive, and more affordable. Look at their numbers side by side last year. Pressures per game, 4.5 for Phillips, 3.5 for Crosby. Age in 2026, Jaelan Phillips, 27. Max Crosby, 29. So is Phillips the player that Crosby is? No, but he's younger, more affordable, and last year, as far as pressures go, he was more productive, and like Crosby, he can get after the quarterback, but he's also really good against the run. As for A.J. Brown, there is a belief that if A.J. Brown gets traded, this is another thing, I don't want to see A.J. Brown get traded, but if he does, it has to happen soon. That makes total sense, right? The Eagles probably want to have their ducks in a row, their plans in place for how they're going to approach free agency and approach the NFL draft, depending on if A.J. Brown's going to be on the roster or not. If he's not, wide receiver skyrockets up the leaderboard as a need for Philadelphia. If A.J. Brown is on the Philadelphia Eagles, wide receiver is not as much of a need. But if he gets traded away, you got to address it either in free agency and or in the NFL draft. So over the next day and change, we could see some movement on this front if Howie Roseman decides to trade away A.J. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'm giving you shows like this all the time. Subscribe to my new channel. I appreciate that. Tomorrow we'll be live right here on Eagles Now, and anytime the Eagles make a move, we'll be talking about it.